Thank you very much for joining me on the News Hour. So lots of claim and counterclaims coming out from Gaza right now. A lot of it unverified, of course. But what stage do you think we are at now in this conflict? But let's face it, a lot has happened in a short space of time.
Well, Miranda, thanks for having me. And with respect to your question about the stage of the conflict, I would argue this is the stage where the fighting resembles the heavy urban combat that we've seen in past wars with both Israel and Gaza and Lebanon, but also the United States in places like Iraq and Syria going back a decade or two. So this is where the fighting will get, it already has become very dynamic. As your images are showing already, the infrastructure in Gaza is bombed out, it's heavily damaged. Sometimes that kind of terrain gives the advantage to the defensive side or the insurgent side, in this case, Hamas. They can hide in these partial structures or piles of rubble and shoot and move. So I think, unfortunately, the fighting is going to look like this for a while. Meanwhile, whatever Israel thinks they can hit from the air, whether it's tunnels, whether it's large formation of Hamas fighters, although I doubt that that is happening now on the ground, they will try and do that. So are we in the middle of this campaign? I would say yes. We are not. I don't think we're anywhere near the end of it. And I think this is what the fighting is going to look like for the next several days, if not weeks.
Indeed, and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been talking about making some ground, but is that effectively PR from him? Is there any basis to some evidence to suggest that he is overcoming Hamas in any significant way?
Well, there's been sporadic reports about casualty figures, and I know that's a morbid thing to talk about. With respect to either on the IDF side or the Hamas side, some of the figures from over the weekend were that the IDF has claimed that about 5,000 Hamas fighters killed or captured. Apparently, maybe more are surrendering now. But even if that's an accurate reflection of the progress the IDF has made, that's still probably only 20% of the strength, the manpower strength Hamas had before October 7th, and have those numbers increased as a result? Is there some kind of reserve capacity? We don't know the answer to that. So it looks like Hamas still probably has thousands of fighters they can bring to arms, and most of those fighters are probably still underground and will only emerge above ground for limited periods of time. You mentioned earlier in your reporting that the IDF, there may be up to 400 IDF casualties already, and that number is in line with some of these other heavy urban fights we saw on the U.S. side in Iraq, in Syria, and other places. So these are the kind of figures that each side is going to claim as a measure of progress. But I don't think this is, in any case, on either side, this is what victory looks like. And maybe that's another thing where Prime Minister Netanyahu's depiction of, or conception of what victory is now the death or capture of the most senior Hamas figures, to include Yahya Sinwar. And maybe if they can accomplish that, then there might be an end to the heavy kind of fighting now. But again, that's only one potential. We don't know if that's how Israel will define victory going forward.
And the longer this conflict goes on, what are the prospects for those hostages still being held?
Well, that's another difficult part of this campaign. And these were some of the goals that Prime Minister Netanyahu laid out at the beginning, is that in the aftermath of October 7th, is that all the hostages had to be returned unharmed. And here we are 2 months into it. There's still probably about 140 hostages who have not yet been returned. How many of them are still alive and haven't been killed or injured in the Israeli campaign or some kind of Hamas reprisals? We don't know the answer to that, but that might be another measure of where Israel believes they can actually put an end to the fighting, is if they get all the hostages back. But it's at least up until now, it appears to be proven very difficult for Israel to try to recover those hostages through hostage rescue missions on their own. The overwhelming majority of the hostages have come as a result of the negotiated releases on the Hamas side. So absent that, how will Israel recover the 100+ hostages in addition to all the other campaign objectives they have, we also don't know how that's going to play out.
All right, Javed Ali joining me live from Michigan. Thank you very much for your insight on the NewsHour.